Now, they hoover up the rubbish and crumbs that we leave behind, but should we feed the armies of pigeons that peck around our town centres?
Earlier this week, an elderly disabled man from Morecambe was jailed for feeding pigeons as it broke the terms of an antisocial behaviour disorder. Today, a protest will take place against his sentence.
So, are they pests or an important part of our cities and towns? We've been asking you what you think.
Birds, just natural, and I like birds, you know.
Disgusting. Yeah. Flying rats.
Stop the pigeon! Stop the pigeon!
They're kind of dirty and like a bit diseased.
They've been fed by some of the locals who should be jailed.
I just don't like them in my back garden, to be honest.
Pigeons are flying rats. If you feed the rats, then don't complain if the rats come around your house.
I think they're part of nature in the city.
A lot of children feed the pigeons, it's a bit of fun.
When I went past them, they flew up into my face.
Pigeons are brilliant. We love them.
They're a nuisance and need to be culled. Some of them will come rest on your hand while they eat.
Stop the pigeon now!
Let's talk to Tim Dixon, who's a pest controller from Lancashire, and biologist Adam Rogers, who's in our Bristol studio for us. OK, Tim, you must hate them.
Not as strong as hate. Pigeons do have a place in society, however, pigeons deserve and they need to be controlled. But it is part of our takeaway and throwaway society of pasties, burgers and all such like that we leave lying around, which makes it easy life for them.
And how do you control them? They seem to be everywhere.
A lot of people think that we just cull pigeons. Pest control isn't all about going round and culling everything. We have prevention measures where, a lot of your older buildings in Manchester have a lot of netting up nowadays, and a lot of the post and what we call post and pigeon spikes. Very good, very effective. However, stuff like this needs to be maintained. A lot of people think that they're a very dirty animal, which they get the bad press, but they live in town centres.
Let's talk to Adam about this. Adam, there is that image of pigeons, isn't it? And flying rats is often a common phrase used for them. It's thought that they carry disease. Are these presumptions fair?
Well, in fact, that's not the case. I mean, looking at the reviews and at the literature on this subject, there's only actually been 2 documented cases of diseases such as salmonella being passed on to people from pigeons. And if we consider the amount of contact pigeons have with people on an everyday basis, the chance of catching anything from a pigeon is very, very slim.
So, but do they need to be controlled, though? Because this is what Tim's, obviously, the business Tim's in, and lots of people do find them, they do find them irritating.
They're a very polarising species, that can't be denied. I mean, some people love pigeons, some people hate them. But with regard to control, generally they're a very self-limiting species, so they will limit themselves to the amount of food that is available. With the pest control companies, yes, as Steve was saying, they are sometimes culled, but these sorts of measures don't have any long-term impact on the population, and in fact can make it grow, because the more pigeons you kill, the more resources you free up for the pigeons, and therefore the bigger the population becomes. So by culling pigeons, as a lot of the pest control companies do, you in fact end up making the population larger and stay around for a much longer period of time. So only the pest control companies gain from that in the long term.
Is that right, Tim? Do you find that you have to go back to the same place over and over again, that they fill the void you leave?
What we try to do as a company and as an industry is, rather than culling pigeons, a lot of people think that we just run out and cull them straight away, is the prevention measures. So if I turn up to a client and say it's a warehouse client, and they're having issues with pigeons, obviously, if their guano, which is their droppings, ends up on their products and then is shipped to a customer, their customer is not going to be a very happy person. So what we try to do is stop them entering the building. It can be done by different means and ways, pigeon netting. Some football stadiums even use hawks. They use the hawk at Wimbledon.
Wimbledon, yeah.
There's varying different ways. It's more the droppings and the guano that people don't like. It's not nice to stand in, it's awful to clean. I've cleaned it many a time. So it's more about prevention and making people aware that when you do throw that food on the floor, something is going to eat it before a sweeper comes along.
Well, this is one of the reasons we're talking about this, because an elderly gentleman has been charged with an ASBO for feeding a pigeon. Adam, this again is a polarising subject, isn't it? Should you feed pigeons? People are very happy to feed birds in their gardens, sparrows, blue tits, robins, the like, but pigeons it's not always received so well, is it?
Absolutely not. I mean, as you say, as a nation, we spend over £200 million every year on feeding the birds, and even the RSPB do encourage us to feed them in our gardens. And yet, with pigeons, people seem to think there's a completely polar opposite view on feeding these birds. Certainly, no animal should be fed to excess. But when you consider the size of the pigeon population, if their population was held up just by people intentionally feeding them, then we'd have to be putting up kilos and kilos of food every day, which simply isn't the case. So the majority of the food that the pigeons are eating are from carelessly dropped food by takeaway goers, by people revellers in the evening. So people need to be a bit more cleaner in their habits, throwing stuff away, and maybe the population wouldn't be quite as large as it is. It really isn't down to these people sort of specifically feeding the pigeons causing the problem.
Yeah, to point, I think, Adam, Susan Reynard contacted us this morning to say, nature's to be enjoyed, appreciated, we created the urban habitat. If it suits pigeons best, that's better rather than nothing. So I suppose they only come here for the food, don't they?
They do indeed. I mean, one of the main issues to consider is the fact that the seagull population is rising. So this is proof that there is lots and lots of food out there, so much so that as well as having large pigeon populations, the seagull population increasing. So that makes me think maybe it's better the devil we know, because seagulls, they may be much more rowdy, and pigeons aren't quite so much of an issue as the noisy seagulls. So it's a case of swings and roundabouts, really.
Adam, Tim, thanks very much. It's certainly got many of our viewers talking. Derek Shaw says they are a pest. TV chefs should promote pigeon pie. Perhaps we should talk to James Martin about that later. Helen McMahon, though, makes pigeons seem preferable, she says, to the gigantic aggressive seagulls that she has